السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Now, we have about 6 more principles left, and that should carry us to the end, inshallah. But this number 4 is one of my sincerely important and highly advised principles, which is stay out of harm or disarm, take the air out of the argument, and be honest. Now, stay out of harm or disarm and take the air out of the argument means that, when giving da'wah, you don't want to put yourself in a situation that is going to cause you any trouble. For instance, if someone comes to you aggressively, and you can tell this person is going to be highly aggressive with you, and let's say you're alone by yourself, it's just you and this person, and maybe if I even get into the argument of trying to debate with him at this point, it may just push them over the edge. You can tell someone's just so angry, they're ready for a reason to get into an altercation with you. Then maybe the wisest form of decision is to walk away from that encounter, or to take that encounter into a more public place. Like if you're in an alleyway, you're on a side street, just walk with them out into the open, into the public. And when I talk about giving street da'wah, which is something that I hope the Muslims of Minnesota will get involved in the springtime. It's not a winter sport in Minnesota, I know that for sure. But I never tell anybody to go by themselves. Go in teams of 2 or 3, with sisters more than that. If a group of sisters going out, they need to go big group. Just so that you make sure you don't have any problems, you don't have any harm. But that's another thing, is just to stay out of harm or disarm and take the air out of the argument. Take the air out of their argument means whatever it is they're coming with, whatever fallacy you may find in them, find a way to take the air out of the argument. Like the aggression point, the way Shaykh Yusha dealt with it, was smiling with the man or being tolerant with him. Or if they're coming with this, God is 1 and 3 personages thing, know how to take the air out of that argument. Know how to deflate that argument, or God is multiple, they believe in polytheism, know how to take the air out of the argument. This comes with having the knowledge and the principles of Tawheed and so on and so forth, is being able to take the air out of the argument. And this we see from the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ and the da'wah of the many prophets that have been talked about in the Quran, the way they dealt with people. They would take the air out of their argument. Can anybody tell me one great, amazing analogy that we find in the Quran of a prophet using a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of logic, a little bit of tolerance, and a little bit of hukum to take the air out of the argument of his people?
Nabi Ibrahim.
Ibrahim did that very beautifully when we see that he had, even his father, subhanAllah, was one who was worshipping idols and was, even one who made the idols himself. And they had this place where they used to worship in the temple, all of these idols, and they had one big one. And what did Ibrahim do? He went in one night and he took an axe, he chopped them all up and placed the axe on the bigger one. And then when the people came the next day, he didn't really go directly, it was more or less trying to provoke their thought. When he went the next day, they were like, what happened to our gods? And we know the story that they went and they said, this young man who's always speaking against our gods, he went to Ibrahim alayhi salam and said, why did you destroy our gods? Or who did this, or what have you? And he said and asked, why don't you ask the big one? He's the only one left and he has the axe, why are you asking me? And of course their argument was, very well, these things don't talk. And that was Ibrahim's, well, how would you worship something that cannot respond to you, nor can it even defend itself? What kind of God is this? You see how Ibrahim took the air out of their argument. Took the air of their argument. The Prophet ﷺ did this very well with the mushrikeen of the idol worshippers of Mecca. And we see many examples of this with the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Even some of the dialogues that took place between Ammar and his father Yasir and his mother and so on and so forth about the gods. And there was even one companion, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but he used to say that, after he accepted Islam, he saw the fallacy of their belief so much. He used to say that we used to take dates, and when they were traveling, they would make a god out of it, so they have something to worship. He said, but then if we got too hungry, we would just eat it. So he's like, I just can't, realize how illogical that was. So being able to take the air out of the argument and stay out of harm is very important. And that comes through learning these principles and techniques of dealing with different groups. But the most important one is the last one. What does it say? Be honest.
Be honest.
Be honest. This is one of the greatest pitfalls of the du'at of our generation. And I make this disclaimer very well known everywhere in the world. I've done this course. If someone wants to get involved in da'wah, in order to become an apologist for Islam, to always say that they're sorry about Islam and they are apologizing for Islam, and to water Islam down and sugarcoat it in order to try to, give it to the people, kind of like we do our kids. We go to Walgreens and they give us a prescription. We say put a lot of syrup and cherry and flavors, so they'll take it. We try to do this with Islam to give it to people. If you want to get involved with it for that, let them know that the positions are all filled and we're not accepting any applications at the moment. We don't need it because there are already too many people doing that. Too many people doing that. If you want to get into da'wah, then get into it with a sincere intention to be honest with wisdom, but to be honest with people and let people know the truth about Islam, because that's your only job, to let them know the truth. Because someone who becomes an apologist for Islam, or someone who waters Islam down, has apparently forgotten that guidance only comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if Allah does not want someone to be guided, I don't care how sweet tasting you might try to make Islam seem, if Allah does not want them to have guidance, they will not have guidance. This is the qadr of Allah, and it cannot be changed. Very clear, we have to understand this. So you tell them the truth. If Allah wants them to be guided, they will be guided, no matter how harsh that truth might be. And sometimes the truth is harsh. To think that the truth is always sweet and gentle and kind is not always like that. Sometimes the truth is a stark reality. And someone who has been in darkness for a very long time, when you show them the light, sometimes it's a little rough. But we do it with the most sincerest intent, with wisdom, in order to tell people the truth. Now, an example of this, I'll just give you an example from something that I experienced. I was once at a lecture, and it was a university lecture. It was a very highly publicized university lecture, and I think it was in Cambridge in the UK. But anyway, it was going to be a discussion panel and questions revolving around terrorism and Islamic-related violence, extremism, and so on and so forth. And they invited me. And apparently some other factions within the organization that invited me realized, that I'm not really keen on mixing the truth with anything else. I kind of try to tell it how it is. So they invited their own speaker as well. So there was 2 Islamic speakers. There was one Christian Jew and there was 2 Islamic speakers. So when the questions were being put in forward, they were being put in written format and to whom they were addressed to. And I saw, the brother who was getting the questions, who was a proponent of Sheikh Fulan, we'll just call him Sheikh Fulan. He saw a question to Sheikh Fulan that said, what does Sheikh mean? What does Sheikh mean? Because they called me a Sheikh and I made it my sincerest intention to let them know that I'm not. So they asked him, what does a Sheikh mean if you are one? And then there was a question to me, is what is then jihad in Islam? Because I was trying to explain to them that the jihad that is put upon Muslims is not the jihad of Islam. So they asked, what is jihad then? So the other Fulan took the questions and flipped them and gave Fulan, Sheikh Fulan, the question about what is jihad, and gave me the question about what does Sheikh mean. And it was just crazy because I just said that I'm not a Sheikh, so it's hard to tell you what one is, but the Arabic word Sheikh means an old man, it means an elder, it means someone who is respected as an elder. That's all it means, and I'm not old enough to be a Sheikh, and I don't have enough knowledge to be a Sheikh, so I don't know. And Sheikh Fulan got up about his question about jihad, talking jihad is just, a struggle within the soul to overcome evil, and the physical jihad was something that was for, a time and a people, but we're beyond that time now. We're in the Meccan phase of the Prophet's life. I was just, and I'm really trying to decide within myself, should I let Sheikh Fulan just get away with what he's saying, or should I don't want to embarrass him, I don't want to have to tell him he's wrong in front of all these people, until I saw the questioner. The person who wrote the question, I saw him shaking his head. I saw him going like this. He knew already that what the Sheikh Fulan was saying was wrong and was not a true representation of the question he asked. And so I had to say something. I had to stop Sheikh Fulan. Well, I didn't stop, I let him finish, but said I wanted to add on. I tried to be as nice as I could. I wanted to add on, that this is a tint of jihad, but it is not the understood meaning. When we see that root word jahada in the Quran, or we see the root word jahada in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, 99% of these meanings are always speaking about a physical struggle against injustice. And this is the truth, is that jihad in Islam, in its understood sense by the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, was a struggle, whether it be internally or externally, to establish justice on the earth, to make sure that the word of the Creator of all that exists becomes the supreme word, His law becomes the supreme law, and His way of life becomes the supreme way of life, in order to better society. Jihad has come into the earth in order to remove it from injustice, from oppression, from tyranny, from terrorism, from violence, from abuse, from any form of evil or shar at all. Jihad has come to eradicate it and establish justice on the earth, to see that all human beings get their due rights within the legislation given by the Creator, and that no one is treated unfairly or unjustly, or anyone is able to tyrannize over another or lord over another due to their wealth or their status or their prominence or their family. This is what Islam came to establish, that the weak will be protected, and the poor will be protected, and the rich and the powerful will not overbear them, but will give them their due rights. All of these things are contained within the word jihad, and under the root system of jihad, the struggle to see that this is correct. And I said, now none of that is bad. Anyone to say that these are bad goals to have for life, I mean, it's just illogical and irrational. And honestly, everyone clapped. Everyone in the room clapped, all the non-Muslims, because I said what jihad was really about, and they got to see that what a Muslim believes in his jihad is not what is being put on the Muslims according to the Western media ideology of jihad. Because I said, what they call jihad, we don't have any idea what it is. That actually is what jihad has come to eradicate. So it's an oxymoron to say that Muslim jihadists killed 20 innocent people, or blew up this building, or took down this plane. So that's an oxymoron, because jihad has come to make sure that these things don't happen, to eradicate the world of these things. That's terrorism and tyranny and oppression and murder, which jihad has come to seek an end to by any means necessary within the guidelines of the Islamic law. So this is what I mean by be honest. Be honest with them, because then there wouldn't be such a taboo about these issues and these subjects. And every brother wouldn't be getting chased around by the FBI just because he uses the word jihad in his lecture. Because people would understood what he is talking about within the context of the meaning. That this is what it means. This is what it means. To speak the truth, to do right, to establish justice, all of this. So we need to speak the truth and say the right thing. That yes, the only way of life that the Creator has sent to humanity since the beginning has been Islam. There has been no change to the system. There has been no change to the ideology. There's only been some revision in the methodology of applying the guidelines that God has sent. And that's very clear. We understand that as Muslims, that it's always been the same way. And this is one thing that I've tried to convey in a way that people understand, and is kind of like operating software for computers. Like, let's say I'm a Mac guy, so I know Mac software. What did they have? They came out with a Mac OS X, and then they had the Leopard, which was what, 10.4, and then they came out with the Snow Leopard 10.5, or no, Snow Leopard was 10.6, and then they'll come out with Lion, all these things. I said all of these things have changed, but the basic operating system has been the same. There's just been updates and revisions to the software to make it more compatible with what is relevant today. I said this is God's system of sending His guidance to humanity. It's always been the same type of system, but maybe the operating system has changed from time to time with a revision that is compatible to what people were dealing with at their time, and what was more conducive to their environment. And then God decided, when He chose to do so, to send the universal operating system to humanity. Islam, as it is in our present state, is the universal operating system. It does not need an update. Does not need a firmware update, a software update. It does not need anything added or subtracted to it. It is a universal operating system. And it's not to say there's not other operating systems out there. There are other operating systems out there, but these operating systems are flawed because they are developed by human beings. Because the human beings developed them, they're flawed. They're full of holes and viruses and bugs and susceptible, all kinds of things. But the system that God has sent, the final operating system of Islam in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, is a universally sound and stable operating system. That if humanity would just use it as a framework, then it would solve many of their problems. I know that's a little techie jargon, but some people get it. University students tend to get that. And I always see IT. You can always tell the IT majors in the room when you start talking like that. So be honest. Any questions about that? Yes.
Just comment.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what is your opinion? Muslims, should they put up with a tyranny government?
Well, when it comes to a tyrannical rule, tyrannical rule is, first and foremost, this is a deep subject, unfortunately. There's a lot of gray area around it that has been placed upon it. But one beautiful thing that was stated by Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah ta'ala, who was the Imam of the Tabi'een. He lived at the time of one of great tyrants, Hajjaj bin Yusuf, great tyrant, killed a lot of Muslims. He used to say that the ruler is a reflection of the interior of the people. That the ruler that Allah has appointed over you is usually a reflection of the interior of the ummah. Meaning that the insides of the Muslim hearts are corrupt, then Allah is going to give them corruptness without. And there were some people who came, this is a very beautiful example. There were some people who came to Hassan al-Basri during his time, some youth, and they asked him to give them a fatwa to fight Hajjaj. To fight Hajjaj because he was killing Muslims. He was the appointed Khalifa, but he was killing Muslims. And you know what did Hassan al-Basri say? He said no. He said, because if Hajjaj is a test from Allah to you, then a test cannot be won except by patience and perseverance and dedication to Allah. He said, and if this is a punishment from Allah upon you for your disobedience to Him, punishment cannot be removed by the sword. So he gave them no permission to do so. He said, you will only bring harm to yourselves and the ummah. And they rejected and they killed and they fought Hajjaj, and what happened? Hajjaj slaughtered every single one of them. And then Hassan al-Basri ta'ala said that if only the youth would be patient and dedicate themselves to Allah, it would not be long before Allah would make for them a way out, as He's promised in His book. He said, but people are too quick to run to their swords, so Allah leaves them to fall on their swords. It was very, very clear. It was very beautiful as well. And it is true. Because we keep saying that we want to get rid of these tyrannical rulers, when in reality, if we go back into history, one thing that we've learned from history is that we've learned absolutely nothing from history. If we go back into history, is this a nuance that there have been revolutions to get rid of tyrants anywhere in the world? No. This has happened even in our past. And what has usually almost always happened, we've always replaced one tyrannical ruler with another one. And in many cases, even worse. We have gotten rid of one thing to replace it with another evil. And we have not learned that from our past. And that's very unfortunate. And the only good that can come out of any of this is if a true system of Islam is implemented behind it. Then we can some glimmer say that there was some benefit in this. But without that, there is no benefit whatsoever, because too many people are going to get harmed and killed. There's going to be too much fitna, there's going to be too much confusion. And what's going to happen in the end is much of the same. Much of the same. Because if we look around at the ummah, we just have to be realistic that a lot of the ummah is not ready for a just rule. We're not ready for a just ruler. Because if we were to be given a just ruler, we would not cease to oppress them on a daily basis with all of our evils. They would get so fed up with us, and we would not deal with them justly. We would not deal with them righteously, and we would not deal with them correctly. So that's why Allah hasn't given it to us. Allah has not given it to us. When we are ready and willing and will be a benefit to humanity, then maybe Allah will give us an established place of rule again. But He will not give it to us to destroy the world. Allah will not put us in a position for us to just wreck everything. let the non-believers wreck the world. They'll have to answer to Allah on the day of judgment of that. We need to make ourselves ready to take a place of leadership. Because it's meant for this ummah. Leadership of the world is meant for the pious and for the righteous. But I wouldn't say, looking at the ummah as a whole now, that we're absolutely ready for that. Inshallah, we should be getting ready for that. Maybe our children, the youth that are around us right now, maybe they can put the world in a better place to do that. They have the energy and the know-how and the means and everything to do it. But that's what I think about that realistically, what we're seeing happening is much of the same. And that's very unfortunate.
In other words, the ruler, that tyrant ruler, he came from that culture and from that society. If the society is good, then on average should be good.
Now there's
and
nothing.
If the society is bad, on average,
sure,
it should be bad guy.
The ruler is normally going to be bad. This is pretty much the way you see it, anyway. But there's nothing wrong with advising the ruler. There's nothing wrong with advising them. There's nothing wrong with admonishing them. There's nothing wrong with speaking against their evils. But when it comes to the point of causing a fitna, like it's going to cause Muslim lives to be lost and things of this nature, the ulama are a consensus. I don't want to say that they are 100% in line, because you do have those who are on the outside. But a lot of the ulama is a consensus that the greater benefit is to remain patient and dedicate ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask Allah for a way out. And then when Allah gives us the opportunity, then we take it on a way out. And a lot of the ulama have said that even if it is a non-Muslim who is tyrannizing you, that if to rebel against them is going to cause great loss of life and harm to the Muslim population, then it is best just to remain patient, because the greater benefit needs to be looked at. This is what Islam takes into perspective, and this is a problem when we don't go to the scholars and the people of knowledge to get advice on these things. We just decide to do things on our own. We make a really big mess, unfortunately. But Allah, we don't have to say any. Yes, brother.
Yeah, just a comment about this, like what happened in Egypt, because there was a big argument about this, al-khuruj al-hakim, al-khuruj al-musallah, like by sword. But when it goes marching or peaceful, to take him off, so this is not matching, because Sayyidina Abu Bakr, he said, if you see me doing right, help me. If you see doing wrong, correct me.
For sure, advise me.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with this.
Yeah, there is nothing. So this is.
But it's the point is we haven't stopped there. We just went kind of overboard with it.
Yeah. Also about jihad, the most verses about jihad is the jihad by money.
Yeah.
70% of the jihad on the Quran is mentioned by money. Then there is military jihad for sure.
Even Allah says in Surah As-Saff, وَتُجَاهِدُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ. You mostly see it, بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ.
Yes.
Giving of your sustenance and love, and then giving of yourself.
And even if you just search for the word jihad in all the Quran, it's most of the verses coming by يُجَاهِدُونَ بِأَمْوَالِكُمْ.
Yeah, but unfortunately, what has happened with a lot of people who have gone to the extremes with this ideology is that they have taken verses from the Quran and they have taken the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and just removed them from their context and strung them together in a way that they can really, really distract someone. Really, if you just sit there and listen to it over and over again, can really make you think you're doing the right thing. That's what happens to a lot of our youth. But they don't put these things back into context. They don't put them into context. And that's very unfortunate. Which I had the same discussion with a few good friends of mine in Egypt, and they were telling me, the Prophet ﷺ said that, I think it was Abdullah ibn Abbas asked him, would there be a fitna? He reminded him of when they were in Medina of how great Allah had blessed them. He said, but would there ever come a fitna, like the time of the fitna which we saw before this, meaning in Mecca and stuff like that? He said, yes. And Abdullah ibn Abbas said, then what do you suggest is the solution for it? He said, be safe. Your sword is going to be the solution for it. But taking that out of context and just pulling it into 2010 without putting all the other parameters in place, that's just not correct. We're not allowed to do that in Islam. We put it in its proper context, for sure, without a doubt. Everything needs to be put in its proper place. If the Ummah is at a place to where we know we have what it takes to do what is right and be in leadership, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will facilitate that. Because the Prophet ﷺ also authentically said, I think this is in the Sunnah of Abu Dawud, that whenever Allah wishes an end, He will create for it the mean. Whenever Allah wishes an end to something, He wishes something to happen, He will create for it the means to happen. So therefore Allah will facilitate for it and make a way for you to see this, inshallah ta'ala. But that's a whole other ball of wax altogether. We already know these things are going to come to pass. The Prophet ﷺ said they're going to come pass. That after me, there will be the righteous khilafah, which it'll stay around for a time, which Allah has ordained for it, which He even gave an exact number at one point, which was exactly how it turned out. He said, then after that, there will come what? After the khilafah, there will come a monarchy. It will be passed down from father to son. It will be passed down from father to son. He said that will stay around as long as Allah wishes. He said then after that will come a kingdom. Well, there will be kings, king after king after king. He said and that will stay around for as long as Allah wishes. Then Allah will remove that, and after that will come back to a righteous khilafah. So I mean, it's going to come to an end. By its very nature, it's going to come to an end. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for every nation, there is a time. And when that appointed time is reached, they cannot delay it nor extend it, not one single bit. Every nation had a time. Some of the greatest tyrants of the world, who the world, if you would have been living their time, would have never thought that their rule would ever come to an end. Everything had an ending. And any nation that has opposed Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and have harmed and maimed the oppressed, the innocent, and harmed the Muslims and the mu'mineen and the mu'minat, then they have always brought their end very quickly. So, Allah knows best. Anything else about being honest? Any other questions? I mean, we just need to be clear about this, to let the world know we're not here to destroy the world. I mean, that is really a warped ideology if a Muslim has the idea that we want to destroy the world. I mean, we must be out of our minds. We did not come, Allah has not given us this pure, beautiful deen to use it to destroy anything. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to establish justice on the earth and make Allah's religion supreme. Are there times where that has to be done by getting involved in struggles and wars? And of course, this is just logical for anyone to say that there will be no struggle and there will be no fights or wars or fitnas. I mean, that's just illogical. That's especially if it's coming from the other side, because they're the greatest perpetrators of instrumenting this. But we have to see the reality behind it, inshallah ta'ala. Sometimes you have to get your hands dirty in order to establish the truth and justice. It's never an easy job, but somebody has to do it, inshallah. Number 5, reinforce agreed upon principles. Reinforce agreed upon principles. That was talking about the correct praise that I'm talking about. For instance, if someone believes in Jesus Christ, they believe in the creator of the heavens and the earth, even though your God and my God might not be the same, we do have some principles that we agree upon that we can build from this. Look, okay, we agree upon this, because if we only talk about our disagreements all the time, and we start with what we disagree on, then we're just going to have an argument. That's very clear. We need to at least come to some things that we agree upon. And then we can branch out to the things we don't agree upon. Because yes, true indeed, in Christianity, there are very, very few differences in our beliefs. There are few differences in our beliefs. They're not as numerous as many people will think. But those few differences are huge. Those few differences are make it or break it major when it comes to the issue of salvation. You see what I'm saying? Like the Meccans, the mushrikeen around the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they had many beliefs which were in congruency with Islam. They believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They believed He was the creator. If you ask them who sent a rain from the heavens, they will say Allah. But they had this problem with associating a partner with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that was so major that Allah says unforgivable. So even though there were few things, those things were major. And that was really a big gap for them to come across. So we do need to come to that truth as well. There's not so many differences between us, but we do acknowledge that those differences are major. They are points of salvation. So we reinforce the things that we agree upon. Any questions about this? Because we got about 5 more slides. And I want to get done in the next 5 minutes.
You just said that Rasulullah, the kuffar in Mecca, they believe in God. Allah. And also, what was the major thing?
The major thing was that they associated partners with Allah in worship. This was their problem. This is why the Rasul ﷺ called them to believe in Allah with tawheed. This is the whole reason for قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. That was the biggest problem for them, was to make that statement. To say Allah is Ahad, that was like, you might as well kill my whole family before I say that. So that was a big problem for them. Number 6, illustrate the signs of Allah through science. This is one beautiful thing about Islam, is it comes with so many proofs that some of those proofs can be put in a test tube. Some of those proofs can be proven through applied sciences, known sciences, not theoretical sciences, not anything that is way out there in jargon that we don't know and its theories and so on, but applied, known science always will be in line with Islam. Because we know Islam is the truth. It is revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created all of these things within the scientific world that human beings are just figuring out. It's not like they're discovering anything. No, they're just coming to the realization of it. Normally, Islam has came to the realization of that a long time ago. So we can use those things to show that this is a great miracle of Islam, a great miracle of the Quran, a great miracle of the Prophet ﷺ that can be put in a test tube and proven. Like the embryology of the Quran, which is a very big thing, like the clouds and the mountains and the iron, all of these different scientific facts that are in the Quran can be proven. This is something I can prove without a shadow of a doubt. I can prove it to you, your own 2 eyes, your own 5 your 5 senses. So this becomes a very big point to hit home with, especially when you're talking to atheists. Science and Islam, and how Islam is in congruency with science, and science in congruency with Islam is a very good debate towards atheism, or someone who denies the existence or maybe doesn't know whether or not to believe in God. This is a big thing. And this is a problem that Islam has never had a stumbling block with. This was the major stumbling block of Christianity throughout the ages, if you don't know. When it comes to Catholicism and the church and science, if you go back to all of those debates raging between the church and between scientists and philosophers and astrologers, Christianity and science would find itself in contradiction so much. But Islam does not have this problem. Islam does not find any contradiction with applied science. With known science, there's nothing in Islam that is contradictory to applied known science. And this is very beautiful. So you can illustrate the signs of Allah through science. Also, you should be aware of and use the 3 messages of the Quran. The 3 messages of the Quran, the first and foremost is Tawheed. This is the major compendium of the Quran is Tawheed, talking about Allah's oneness. The second largest portion is talking about Akhirah, talking about the hereafter. And the third portion is talking about Qasas al-Anbiya, the stories of the prophets. These make up the majority of the Quran, these 3 stories. The rest are, the smaller portion are the things like the rules and regulations, the hudud, and all of these different things are in the Quran, but they are a smaller portion. The major portion is Tawheed, Akhirah, and Qasas al-Anbiya. Because some people need to hear about the oneness of God, and that will bring them in to hear this pure monotheism that Islam puts forward. Some people may need to hear about Akhirah. And Akhirah talking about in both ways. Some people may need to hear about the rewards that Allah gives to those who believe in Him. That may entice some people. Some people may need to hear the punishments that are waiting for them. Some people need to be scared into belief. And we see Allah use these tools in the Quran. He makes you feel good about Jannah and all of these things. And He also makes you very afraid of hellfire and punishment and so on and so forth. And this is also part of a Muslim, how we believe. And Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh put it into 3 good categories, and it also goes well with non-Muslims. He said some Muslims worship Allah like the worship of a slave, which is the lowest form of worship. He said, but it's praiseworthy worship, and it will take you to Jannah. What is the worship of a slave? Out of fear of the master. The slave does what the master wants out of fear of punishment. And some people need that. They need to be feared into punishing. So that's the worship of the slave. He said, then you have the worship of a freed person. A freed person does things out of their desire for reward. They do things out of desire for reward. This is the worship of a freed person. They want to earn Jannah. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with worshiping Allah just because you want to go to Jannah. Because Allah has promised it. That shows your desirous belief in Allah and what He has promised you, and you're yearning for it. He said, then there's the highest pillar of belief, and that's the belief or that's the worship of love. That someone worships Allah just out of sincere love for Him, not caring about any reward and not fearing or worrying about any punishment. This is the person that worships Allah and loves Allah so much that even if Allah were to throw them into the hellfire, they would still worship Allah. Even if Allah were to throw them in the deepest, darkest pits of hell, they would still worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if Allah gave them the highest place in Jannah, it would not distract them from wanting to worship Allah, even if it was promised to them on this earth. Do you see the difference within this? So some people need this as well. They need to be warned. They need to be told about the benefits. And the stories of the prophets work very well, because when we see the stories of the prophets in the Quran, usually Allah tells us about how the prophets dealt with their people and the analogies they used, so on and so forth. This is what we see. And this is beautiful examples to be used, because the best arguments were given by the prophets. The best arguments for da'wah were given by the prophets. And there is a book, I cannot remember for the life of me the author's name. I was trying to remember it during Salah. It's called The Methodology of the Prophets when Giving Da'wah and Calling Others to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I forget the name of the author, but it goes through all of the stories of the prophets dealing with their people, the examples of the prophets dealing with people giving da'wah, and the analogies they used and the stories they told. It's a very beautiful book. I'll try to find the author for you and post it on my website. But it's a beautiful book. Number 8, and we're almost done. Show the fallacy of other concepts and give the Islamic principle and perspective of the proposition. So you show people the fallacy of their arguments and the fallacy of their way of life, and then you give the Islamic principle and perspective. You show them how flawed what they have is, and then you give this perspective for Islam. You just don't tell them how flawed they are and leave them. Oh, you're going to hell and this and that, and then you walk away. Because you've just ruined them. They don't have any way out now. And you've left them depressed. So you give them the Islamic perspective and proposition, which Islam has the answer and has the proposition and the perspective for everything. When it comes to Allah's worship, when it comes to dealings, when it comes to anything in society, Islam has a proposition that is better than anything else. And we know that the Islamic institutions that Allah has given us would solve our problems personally and socially, inshallah. So we need to give them that perspective and that proposition to show them how great the Islamic system is. And this is something that we really need to be on the front about right now. Very particularly is, yes, sister?
I just have a question.
Sure.
Because I see a lot of people, or I've experienced people wanting to invite people to Islam and give dawah, but then they're kind of, after they accept it, they're left. And so what is the responsibility of the person that is inviting another person to Islam, then when they've accepted it, to stay with them? Because you're obviously, when you change, you're still left with a lot of, you may believe something different, but you have a lot of sorting out to do still.
Sure, that's a big problem with people. I could take half an hour just on that, but very briefly, is people who come to Islam who are left, they're not taken care of. A lot of them leave Islam, and that's an unfortunate fact. Is that we lose over half, if not more, of the new reverts that we get every year into Islam. They leave within the first 3 years because they're not taken care of. Nobody tries to integrate them into the Islamic community. No one tries to help them and show them the right way. And what I've tried to establish in every masjid that I could, and it might go on here, I know Building Blocks does this, is the support system, which is when someone accepts Islam, someone gets assigned to them. Either the person that brought them in or someone else who has the capability of training a new Muslim should be assigned to them. And there should be people who fulfill this role. Every da'i, to be a da'i doesn't mean you have to stand on street corners every day. It's such a broad field that there are so many positions within it that everyone has their place. Some people can be just trained to train new Muslims. So when new Muslims enter Islam, they train them and give them the proper foundation. So that after that, the only way they leave Islam is if they decide to leave Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes guidance from them. So there does need to be some support system for them to be buddied up with someone who will take care of them, inshallah. That's how I think we can nip that in the bud really well. But when it comes to giving the Islamic solution, this is something that Muslims and du'at should be on the proactive side of now. because realistically, what they're coming up every few months. You see them come up with a new idea about why we should be afraid of Muslims and why you should be afraid of Islam. It's always something new, and one of the things that are coming to the forefront now is the Islamic system itself. The Islamic system itself, when they use the word Sharia a lot, they like to throw that word around. That if Sharia is going to come, oh my God, they're going to destroy us, they're going to kill us, and all of these things. So they're trying to make people fear the Islamic system itself. We're starting to see, and even though this is, brings a lot of harm, but I'm very actually glad, alhamdulillah, that the real issue is starting to come to the front. The real issue is really starting to come to the front, that the problem they have is with Islam itself and the entire system of Islam. It has nothing to do with terrorism or extremists, or that's all a side issue. But once that's been played out enough, now realistically they have to, okay, people are starting to forget about this, and there's been so many, alhamdulillah, Muslims, putting the information out there that this is not the case, that this light is being shown, that extremism in Islam is not really the biggest threat to the world. So now they're coming to, okay, we got to go to the root of the problem. It is Islam itself is the problem. The system itself is the problem. If Sharia comes to America, it's going to do this and that and the other. Oh my God, we need to go ahead and get on the forefront of this. And there's I think 7 states now that have passed within the state Congress and state Senate, to ban Sharia law from being practiced and this and that and the other. We need to be upfront about the fact that the system of Islam, the Sharia, would do nothing but bring benefit to the world. And we can have no whims about this. That the system of Islam would do nothing but be good for you. It would be good for you. It would not just be good for me, it would be good for you as well. It would bring about the much needed change that the world really, 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 really needs. And we need to be clear about that. Because I've seen too many Muslims falter and lose their religion off of this. Muslims running around, you guys want to bring Sharia law? No, we don't want Sharia. That's a statement that if one does it knowingly leads to kufr. To say that I don't want to live under the system of Islam, then why are you a Muslim? Why don't you go be one of them? We have to be clear about this, that yes, Muslims do want to live under Islamic system, but that is because it brings the much needed justice and all of the things that we talked about to the world. And for a Muslim to be ashamed of that fact is horrible. But they're trying to make this word taboo, and they're trying to make this ideology so taboo that Muslims will not even promote that amongst themselves. And we need to be very clear about that we do stand for living under an Islamic system. Yes, we do. We're here living in the West, and we do the best that we can under the system that we're in to do what is right before God. But would we like to live under an Islamic system? Yes, we would. And if there was a model to show to the world right now, they would see that very well. And just unfortunately, there is no model. There is no perfect model of Islam anywhere in the world. Everywhere has its issues. The only model that we can really show to the world now is that is beautiful, in its most beautiful sense, is really the Medinite model that was practiced under the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and how he established a just society. There are issues of that being replicated through the righteous Khilafah and even through some of the contemporary history a few hundred years ago. We see that in an okay sense, but if you want to go to a perfect sense, then we have to show them the Medinite model. This is the social, economic, political, religious, personal system that was established by the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look how just it was. But we don't know that ourselves, so we don't really have the opportunity to convey that to people. But we should. We should very, very well do that. And it's so beautiful when you see the realities of that. Like there was one interview that was done, I forget the Arabic channel it was on, but there was some Christians there's a family in Jerusalem that are Christians, but they have somehow gotten and they are in possession of the letter that was given by Umar ibn al-Khattab to the Christians of the agreement that was made between Umar and the Christians of Jerusalem. They still contain that letter. And they were on TV promoting that we wish this agreement could be lived up to. We wish the Muslims would come and fulfill this agreement. Which one of the agreements, I don't want to go to the extent, but what is this agreement?
The prophecy treaty,
yeah.
To the Christian
this was
Iran,
yes.
and the Christian of Egypt, and the Christian of
he made treaties with them as
Christian
well.
around the world. Yeah.
But there was a Christian on TV stating that he wished he was even kind of bashing the Muslims, like, where are you at, you know what I mean, upholding, this is an agreement made to us by your Amir, you know what I mean, and you're not upholding it. He was very adamant, though, that one of the agreements that Omar made was that no Jew will ever live in Jerusalem, would ever be allowed into the cities of Jerusalem. They were like, where you guys at? But anyway, we should be letting them know these agreements, show the agreements that the Prophet ﷺ immediately made with the Jews and the Christians of Medina when he first entered into it. I mean, we need to show them these things and let them know that this is Islam. I don't know what you're trying to make the people think is Islam, but it's not. It's not Islam whatsoever. Any questions? We need to be on the forefront of defending that. Yes?
Yeah. This is explanation of science. The word science is the truth about nature. And I absolutely agree with you. You just said, I don't know, it was the 6th point, or I don't remember which point it was. You said that, and Islam itself is finding the truth. So Islam and science is very compatible.
For sure, absolutely. And I mean, we just need to be very forward with that, you know, and very clear about that issue with wisdom and good information, you know, so we can see the light of these arguments. And this Muslims getting upset about this whole argument of go back where you came from. We just need to, you know, forget that, because it's pure ignorance. Because they're showing how ignorant they are. You know what I mean? The more they open their mouths, the more they're showing how ignorant you are. Telling Muslims to go back when they came from, when the majority population of Muslims in America is rapidly becoming indigenous Muslims, 2nd, 3rd generation Muslims, revert Muslims. So I mean, realistically, where do they want you to go back to? You know, I mean, this is just something that we need to let the world know that they're going to have to come to the terms with, because Islam is going to continue to grow, and we are going to end up inhabiting the majority of the world statistically. So I mean, this is something they're trying to deal with, but they're dealing with it in a very, very wrong manner. So we need to let them know that, inshallah. Now, how to approach people. We've got 2 more slides and we're done. Number 1, da'wah through manners and behavior, which this is very well known, that if we show the beautiful example of Islam to the world, then people will be more apt to accept Islam. I don't want to tell you how many reverts I know that are good brothers and sisters that say, I am really glad I knew about Islam before I met Muslims. I'm really glad I knew a lot about Islam before I met too many Muslims, because I would have left Islam because of Muslims. And there are many people who have left Islam because of Muslims and the way we've acted. And we've turned many people away from Islam and off of Islam through our manners and behavior. We need to become the example ourselves. You know, like the statement that Gandhi, you know, very well put forward. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be that change. If you are telling people that Islam has the solutions and is the most beautiful way of life, but yet you are a mess, your character's garbage, your life is a wreck, your family is a mess, you know, I mean, what you need to take your own advice first. Maybe you need to look in the mirror and accept some of that goodness and peace and tranquility and justice for yourself first. We need to be showing the righteous example that no matter what kind of, you know, turmoil we're going under, I'm very happy because I'm a Muslim. I have the right pure way of life. You know, nothing is really going to upset me about that. I'm going to leave that few things with you and a few advices. Number 2, having a discussion with a friend or partner intending for non-Muslims to hear. We used to do this all the time when I lived in New York. And we did this, and I got some brothers doing this in London now, alhamdulillah. We would get on the subway. Me and a brother would get on the subway, and we would assign a few brothers to ride the subway all day long. And what they would do is they would get on the subway and start talking about Islam to each other, but loud enough so that people around could hear. Usually Muslims will, that's something we shy away from. Shh, quiet, man. People here talking about Islam on the train. No, we talk about Islam, talk about the beauty of Islam and the general principles of Islam, you know, things that are going on and how Islam deals with them. Trust me, and especially if you get on a train like this, oh yeah, everybody's listening and everybody's watching every single thing you say. And that's what you want. That's going to be something that is good. The brothers in London, I have made them make an agreement that they're going to record everything. You know, that somebody is recording all of these conversations just in case something happens later. They said this or that. And no, they have the video. We have the video of what we said, just to make sure that all grounds are covered. We're not idiots in this either. But this dawah has been very effective. Number 3, performing acts of worship in public. Prayer at the airport. There was one lady I know who accepted Islam just off of 3 brothers praying in the airport. She said she was sitting in the airport and she saw 3 men, big beards, Arabs. They kept looking at their watches, and she said one of them looked at the watch and he looked at the other 2 and he said, it's time. And they all 3 got up and walked to the bathroom. She said she was freaking out. This was not long after 9/11. She was looking for TSA, she was looking for the police. These guys are going to do something crazy. She said they all came back and one stood in front of the other 2 and they began to pray. And she couldn't get that out of her mind all the way home, and she went home and researched about Islam, and when she found out about Islam, she accepted the religion. So you never know. Foot in the sink. And I'm sure quite a few of you have been caught with your foot in the sink. You know what I mean by foot in the sink, right? Making wudu in public, somebody walks in, you got your feet in the sink. This becomes an opportunity, for you to give dawah to someone. I remember a brother was telling me at University of Houston, he was doing that. Had his foot in the sink, somebody came in and he went a little bit overboard. I think he said it was a little too aggressive with his dawah, wanted to tell them about Islam, and the person just freaked out and ran away, screaming out the door, no, I don't want to hear anything about you crazy Muslims. And then someone came out of the bathroom and said they wanted to know. Someone came out of the stall and said they wanted to know. He gave them dawah and they accepted Islam. So you never know. Having pictures of the Kaaba on your screensaver at your desk at work or in your cubicle, or having an Islamic calendar up, or anything that's going to attract people and make people want to question, so on and so forth. All of these things bring opportunities for you. Number 4, leaving pamphlets on train buses or seats, bus stations, doorsteps, hotel rooms, doctor's office. This is what I make the brothers do in the subway, is they keep pamphlets with them, and whenever they get up, they leave a pamphlet on their seat. They just leave a pamphlet on the seat. You get up, you leave a pamphlet on the seat. Why? Because the next person that comes and sits down, what do they have to do? They have to pick that up before they can sit down. And people are too curious. They're going to look at what they see sitting on their seat. So it becomes an opportunity to give dawah. Some people have gotten angry and said, oh yeah, we'll cause litter, people throw them away. Well, people are going to throw them away anyway if they don't want them. But at least you make sure it's going to get into someone's hand who's going to pick it up and look at it. So this is a trick we use. Leaving pamphlets at bus stations, doorsteps, hotel rooms, doctor's offices, bumper stickers work very good as well. Next one, direct approaches. If you have a dawah table, this is a direct approach. In street dawah, the approach is very straightforward, very direct. What is the purpose of life, etc. You have to learn how to do street dawah. Very direct. Number 3, in an elevator or a store, what are the ways to strike up a conversation? Sometimes you have a very limited amount of time to give someone some dawah. You may be in a line at a grocery store. You may be in an elevator with someone. You may be on an escalator with someone. You have a very limited time. So that's what the next section is talking about, is how to take advantage of some of this direct conversation and role playing and so on and so forth. If your time is limited, if you have a lot of time, so on and so forth. Number 4, the name game, like using the word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just explaining the word of Allah, is one of the great dawah tools that I really like to use. There are 3 words that I like to ask people to let me explain, and these become such a beautiful tool for dawah. The first one is Allah. Let me explain to you what Allah means. And I wish I could go through that whole rhetoric with you, but we're out of time. Maybe, inshallah ta'ala, next time I come back, we'll go through that whole rhetoric. Number 2, Islam. I like to explain the word Islam, what it means, what it connotes, what it implies. And then number 3, Muslim. What does the word Muslim mean? What does it imply? What does it connote? Because these 3 things together, just explaining these words becomes a very beautiful way to give da'wah. Asking people, do you know what the word Muslim means? Do you know what it means to be a Muslim? Do you know what the word Allah that Muslims use means? Do you know what Islam itself, do you even know what the word means? So this kind of gives you a good opening to tell them about Islam in an extensive fashion. Now the last and most important part is finish the sale, make the invitation. Close the deal. I like to say close the deal, make the invitation. I need to change that. Close the deal, make the invitation. What do I mean by that? Simply,
asking them direct.
Ask them to accept Islam. Asking them to become a Muslim is what da'wah means. Because if you are giving da'wah to someone, it means inviting or calling them to Tawheed. If I just tell someone about Islam and don't ask them to believe in it, I have not given them da'wah. I have disseminated information. I've given them a lecture. I have not given them an invitation. So you have to ask them. Even if you only spend a few minutes with someone and tell them just about Allah, or tell them just about Islam, or just about Muslims, you should at least ask them to accept Islam. Who are you to say that they won't accept Islam based on that little bit of information? How many people have accepted Islam on smaller information that you could give to someone in 2 minutes? There are people who have accepted Islam on very, very small amounts of information. If Allah wants guidance for someone, He will give it to them. So you ask them. And if they reject at that point, then you give them the open invitation to get more information. Or if you want more information, you go to this website, take this pamphlet, get in touch with me, here's my contact. You know what I mean? You leave that door open, but you have left them asking them. So you've done your job. Would you like to accept Islam? And this was something the Prophet ﷺ did. Direct da'wah. When he sent letters to the kings of the world, his letters were short and sweet. And within those letters was the invitation, accept Islam. Accept Islam, and Allah will reward you. This was always in his letters to people to accept Islam, even if his letter was only a paragraph. Within that contained the invitation to accept Islam. Accept Islam, and it is of your benefit. What was the statement? قُل لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ تُفْلِحُونَ. Say La ilaha illallah and you will have success. Very clear and and I've learned this lesson the hard way. And I finish with this. I was once at a conference, and subhanAllah, my lecture was on the call of all the prophets, which was to Tawheed. The call of all the prophets and messengers of God to the oneness of Allah. I mean, this is pristine for me. This is what I like to do. Is exactly getting to the point I want to talk about. And there was a guy in the front row nodding his head. I mean, you could tell he was a guest, but you could tell he was loving everything I said. And then I finished my lecture and I sat down. And another brother got up. And he started talking about how easy it is to accept Islam. This is what he was talking about, how easy it is to become a Muslim. He was from the 877 Why Islam hotline. How easy it is to become a Muslim. At that point, I saw the guy get up, come to the stage, and ask to be a Muslim. And when we talked to him afterward, he told me, he was like, I was in agreement with everything you said, and I wanted to be a Muslim. I just didn't know how. I didn't know how easy it was or whatnot. I realized how big of a mistake I had made. If it were not for that other brother, he may have left not accepting Islam. So you have to make the invitation. You have to ask them to accept Islam. If they don't accept Islam and you've done your job, then you can rest knowing that you have done your best to deliver the message. That's all we're here to do, is to deliver a message to humanity, to worship Allah alone and to submit to His authority, obey Him, and to try to avoid disobeying Him. And that will bring us success in this life and the next. That is our clear goal. Whatever happens beyond that is not in our control. Beyond that, it is not in our capacity. If Allah guides people, we're not in control of that. If He does not guide people, we're not in control of that. Even if hardship comes to you because of this call, you are not in control of that. And it will not be saying that I have thrown myself in destruction. That's not wise. No, because you are doing something which Allah has commanded you to do. Therefore, if some harm befalls you because of that, then know that it was within the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is good for you. This is the aqeedah of a Muslim, that we believe in the qadr of Allah, the good and the bad of it, and we accept it with contentment. This is what we have to do. That's like saying that if I make salah, and if I make salah that I'm going to, I can't pray and bend down too much because my knees are going to get bad and there's going to be a problem. So I make that excuse. That making salah is a hardship on me. If I do this bending so much, I have arthritis, I'm going to break my legs and all this and that. That does not free you from the excuse. You know what I mean? If you fall down and break your leg, it was the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It wasn't because of the salah. You were doing what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you to do. This is the same way with that. You do what you were told to do. Everything else is left in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this was very beautifully stated. And with this, I finish with one of the greatest da'i of a few centuries ago, whom most of the du'at of the day, a lot of the du'at of the day are taking a lot of his information and using it as tools towards da'wah, was Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala did so much in his life to forward the cause of Islam and to forward the cause of purifying the world from ignorance and misinformation about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he suffered greatly because of it. He suffered immensely because of it. And even his arguments towards the Christians and the Jews, it's just amazing if you read some of his arguments. And he was jailed and imprisoned on many occasions and eventually died in prison. And when he was told, when he was being taken in front of the Amir at one point in his life, he was told, look, if you keep doing what you're doing, they're either going to, there's only three things that they're going to do. They're either going to expel you from the land, they're going to imprison you for the rest of your life, or they're going to kill you. So you need to quit what you're doing. He said, look here, hold on a second, let me tell you something. He said, I am doing my obedience and my servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when it comes to servitude, being a good slave for Allah, he codified a science on that almost. He said, if they expel me from the land, he said, it's what? He said, that's hijrah. That's hijrah from me. And it gives me time to contemplate the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's good for me. He said, if they imprison me for the rest of my life, he said, it's what? Itikaf. That's my itikaf. Itikaf is what? Spending alone time with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, and that's good for me. He said, and if they kill me, then that is for me martyrdom. And I get to meet the one whom I love so much. And that's good for me. He said, so any of the three outcomes is going to be good for me. And at the end, I know Allah is only going to give me good because I'm doing my job. And what he told to the Amir was so beautiful that Muslim scholars have coined this so much. He said a very beautiful ideology within a few words. He said, Jannati, my paradise, fi sudri, is in my breast. He said, my paradise is in my breast. So really there's nothing that can harm me in this life because I've already experienced Jannah here. And he even said that those who do not experience Jannah in this life do not expect to experience Jannah in the next life. Because Jannah in this life is being content with the condition Allah has placed you in. Being content with whatever Allah has given you, whatever situation Allah has placed you in, and whatever condition Allah has allowed you to be in, you are content with that. That's real paradise on this earth. And he had that. And we see that from his example. So we need to try to get just a little drop of that. You know, that yeah, there may be opposition against Islam and the Dawah, so on and so forth. But that only lets us know that we're doing the right thing. Shaitan is not opposed to anything which is not of benefit to humanity. Anything that is of benefit to humanity and definitely bringing them towards the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, he's going to be on the forefront opposition for that. And we see that is very, very true. So we should know that we're doing the right thing. If we're left alone to do as we wish, then we should question. We should question what's going on and what's happening. If it becomes too easy for us, we should really question it. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only tests those whom he loves. Any questions as an ending? And we're done for today.
Yeah, right. God said, "Inna alayna lil huda." We are the ones which we guide. So we give the message. The guidance comes from Allah.
Any other questions? Yes.
The point when you said you had the brothers talking in the subway, trains and stuff. What do they talk about? Is it obvious or that?
Is it obvious? Yeah, they talk about.
Is it like? I mean, are they like tactful?
Yeah, you gotta be tactful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just striking up a conversation, like, oh, you know, I was reading in this. You know, let me tell you something. You know, I was reading in this book today. You know, where it was talking about, you know, Allah, the creator of all that exists and being one. You know, and that relates to how the universe is created. You know, the creation goes in a one defined matter. All the physical laws and all the metaphysical laws and all the universal laws are one. And how, you know, just striking up conversations like that, or even more simplistic conversations. Like, you know, I was being taught in a class today what Islam really is about. You know, and start telling that. You know, that Islam is conjoined with this word and that word. You know, but they realistically look like they're talking to each other, and they might be having a good conversation with each other, but saying it in a way that can be heard by other people. You know, but in a tactful manner. You know, look flagrant with it. Then you just look silly. It has to be tactful. That's why it has to be role played. Nobody can do it if they don't role play it. If you don't role play it, it's gonna look
like you're reading from a script or something.
Silly. Yeah, very, very silly. Any other questions? Inshallah ta'ala, I look forward to seeing you guys again. Keep looking at Guidance TV. Our Islamic television station is getting better and better by day. We have established a studio here in Minneapolis. We've also established a very professional studio in New York City and Manhattan, which is why I've been gone so much, going back and forth to Manhattan. So we're going to have some new Guidance TV shows coming up very soon, inshallah ta'ala.
When it is broadcast?
When?
Where? Yeah.
All over North America.
All the satellites?
Everyone that has a satellite can get it. And if not, they can get a special satellite for it from Globecast. But anyone with a satellite that can
Dish Network?
It's not on Dish Network. It's on free to air. The frequency for it, if somebody wants to tune their satellite they have into that frequency, is on, if you go to guideus.tv, the frequency is there for you. How to get the satellite from Globecast is there. If you want to get their satellite, it's only one-time fee. You pay $300 something, or $300 plus an install, however much it costs to have it installed, and it's free after that point. Or if someone has a satellite...
With other channels.
Yes, with other channels. Or if someone else has a satellite that is able to receive free-to-air signal, then the frequency is on there. If someone knows how to turn it
Here,
themselves.
inshallah, in the new building, you maybe have a studio.
Yeah, in the new building, inshallah, we're going to set up a studio. Bismillah ta'ala. But yeah, it's going on. And also you can get the Islam box, which I've talked about. That's what I have in my home.
Yeah, I hear it.